Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are cracking open a personality type that's really defined by raw strength, this intense drive, and a fascinating, I think sometimes exhausting tension.
Yeah, exhausting is the right word. We're talking about the number 8.
We are diving into the psychological and practical landscape of the eight, often called the challenger in this framework.
And it's such an essential deep dive because the core theme for the 8 is just, well, it's monumental. It's power, responsibility, authority, and, consequence.
Right.
What the sources really hammer home is this foundational insight. An 8 is often born into a life where strength wasn't optional. It was just required and required early.
So they don't get that long, naive childhood.
Exactly. They learn very, very quickly that for them, power equals survival. It's that simple.
That sets the stakes incredibly high from the start. Okay, so let's set our mission for today. We need to unpack that gap between the strong, commanding outer image and the intense inner vigilance that's always running in the background.
Yes, and specifically focus on how they define control. They see it as safety, not dominance.
That's the key. What looks like a power grab is really them trying to build a fortress.
Precisely. If you look beneath that commanding exterior, the inner world of the 8 is just marked by this constant low-level pressure.
A feeling of being perpetually on alert.
Exactly. The inner monologue is something like, I have to stay on top of this, or more to the point, if I relax for even a moment, things could completely fall apart.
And that sounds utterly exhausting. It suggests their nervous system is basically never, ever fully off.
It's rarely off. And the sources confirm this hyper-alertness. It's rooted in that early necessity. It's this deep-seated learning that weakness is costly and dependence is just fundamentally risky.
So it's a defense mechanism that just got hardwired.
It's a defense mechanism that became their operating system. And what's so fascinating is the tension that creates. You have this immense strength paired directly with this sleepless vigilance. So they operate from this internal truth that control feels tangible, it feels reliable, whereas trust can feel like a liability.
And yet the outward expression is the complete opposite of that internal pressure cooker.
Totally. To others, an 8 just appears intensely strong, serious, commanding. They project this immense confidence.
But it's often unintentionally intimidating, right? The feedback they get isn't, you're so warm, it's, wow, I would not want to cross you.
Exactly. And this is where the unseen burden comes in, and it's a huge point from the research. The stronger the 8 appears, the more in control, the less people tend to check on them emotionally.
Because everyone just assumes they're fine.
Everyone assumes they're indestructible. And that perception, well, it inadvertently isolates them. It hides the massive emotional weight of always having to be the strongest person in the room.
So if that's their emotional state, this intense pressure, let's talk about how that translates into their thinking. We're talking about a mindset that has to be purely strategic.
Oh, absolutely. An 8's mind is essentially a highly efficient strategic scanner. It's always on, always calculating.
What's it scanning for?
It's looking for leverage points, for risk, for outcomes, for the real power dynamics in a room. And most critically, it immediately identifies the weak points in any system.
Any system. A business plan, an organization.
Or a relationship. And the questions they're asking themselves, they reveal that core defensive posture.
Like what?
It's always who's really in control here and what's the worst case scenario, and maybe most importantly, how do I protect this whole situation?
It's always about protection, which explains what they can't stand.
Yes, they have this visceral rejection of anything that threatens stability, so they intensely dislike chaos, gross inefficiency.
Wasting resources, yeah, that's a big one.
It's an offense to them. And most profoundly, emotional manipulation, because that's an attempt to control them through a weak point. Indecision is also a huge trigger.
Because it leaves them exposed. It all comes back to that core psychological truth. For an 8, control feels like safety.
That's it. It's not about prestige. It's a deeply ingrained mechanism to prevent falling apart, to protect against that helplessness they knew early on. They're building a fortress, not an empire for fun.
Okay, so let's shift to the practical applications. Starting with work, because for an 8, their professional life is so often central to their identity.
It's the arena. It's where they can manifest that control and mastery. So it's no surprise they thrive in fields like leadership, business, finance, law.
And especially entrepreneurship.
Oh, entrepreneurship is the perfect fit. It removes the incompetent middle manager and puts them directly in charge of the outcome.
Right. So their ideal work environment is one where they're judged by results, given real authority.
Entrusted with responsibility. They struggle, I mean really struggle, when they feel powerless or when they have to follow a leader they don't respect.
And bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy is the enemy. It's slow, inefficient, and it gets in the way of their strategic mind.
Which maps perfectly onto their relationship with money.
Right.
Money for an 8 isn't just, for buying things.
Not at all. It represents control, security, freedom, and above all, protection. It's a literal, measurable buffer against risk.
Okay, but the sources make a distinction here, right? Between a balanced and an unbalanced approach to money.
A critical distinction. The unbalanced 8, well, they're driven by that core fear. They might chase money compulsively, tying their self-worth directly to their net worth. They never feel safe, no matter how much they have.
But the balanced 8 is different.
Very. They use that same powerful drive, but they see money as a tool for stability. They're brilliant at building long-term assets, ensuring security for their family, for their people. They use their strategic mind to build that fortress in a healthy way.
Okay, now let's talk about the toughest area for the 8, intimacy and relationships.
Yeah, this is where it gets really tricky. The way they show love is incredibly practical. It's through protection, provision, absolute loyalty.
Showing up in a crisis.
Exactly. They will move mountains for you, but they probably won't write you a poem about it.
Because they struggle so much with emotional softness, with vulnerability, the act of letting go of control in that space is just, it's terrifying for them.
It is. That core fear comes roaring back. If I let my guard down, if I show you my weakness, I could lose everything. Or worse, I'll give you leverage over me.
So what does an 8 need in a partner to feel safe?
First, emotional stability. Drama just reinforces their need for rigidity. They also need a partner who isn't constantly competing for control.
That would just be an endless power struggle.
Right. But most importantly, they need someone who respects their strength, but also sees the human, the scared kid, underneath all that armor.
And when they do get hurt, when they're betrayed.
Their defense mechanism is formidable. They don't typically weep, they shut down, they become rigid, impenetrable.
Well, they just withdraw completely.
Yes, they bury themselves in work, reassert control over their business, anything to distract from the emotional pain. They replace feeling with doing.
Which brings us to the final and most important part of their journey. The path from that reactive strength to a truly grounded authority.
The shadow of number 8. This is what happens when they're wounded or overwhelmed. They go from being decisive to domineering.
Suppressing emotion, overworking.
And becoming deeply cynical. Just cynical about trust, about people in general.
And the core cognitive error in that shadow state is exactly what we started with. They mistake control for real strength and power for actual safety.
And that mistake is what allows fear to harden them. It makes them rigid, heavy, and ironically, much less effective because they're trying to carry the whole world alone.
So the transformation, the path to maturity, is about correcting that mistake.
It is. The healthy, mature 8 operates from a place of grounded authority. They lead calmly, they use their power ethically, they share responsibility, and they finally learn how to rest without guilt.
And they come to this ultimate realization that true power doesn't actually need to dominate.
It stabilizes. Their incredible strength transforms from a weapon for survival into a foundation that benefits everyone around them.
But that maturity isn't automatic. It's built on learning some very critical lessons.
There are the shifts that turn their vigilance into true wisdom.
Let's quickly review them. The sources emphasize 5. The first, control is not the same as responsibility.
That's right. Responsibility is about owning the outcome. Control is about micromanaging the process. A mature 8 learns to delegate the latter.
Okay, second, vulnerability, when it's shared with trusted people, actually strengthens authority.
Right, because it builds real, unbreakable trust. It seems counterintuitive to them, but it's true.
The third is crucial for their health. Rest is strategic, not weak.
It replenishes the tool. It prevents the burnout that makes them cynical. Lesson 4, power has to serve something bigger than just the self.
A cause, a community.
Something that gives it an ethical purpose. And finally, 5, trust expands influence. By trusting others, they multiply their impact and free up their own energy.
It's the power of integration, isn't it? An 8 alone can become so heavy.
So heavy. But an 8 who learns to integrate other perspectives, leaning into the principles of a 1 or the calmness of a 9, that 8 becomes truly formidable. Their power stops being defensive and becomes generative.
It's a really compelling journey, from that intense vigilance born out of necessity to a mature, grounded authority where stability is the real goal.
The ultimate goal for the 8 isn't to abandon their strength. That's their gift. It's to transform the source of it, to move from a relentless, anxious inner pressure to a calm, external force that stabilizes and serves.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? If the sign of true authority is stabilization, we want you to consider this final thought. Reflect on a relationship, a habit, or an area of your work. Where in your life could you replace a rigid wall built purely for control with a strong, flexible foundation built on trust? It's a tension worth exploring. We'll catch you next time.